own podcast.
I'm Michelle Obama. People line up for my advice.
No, not her. This former First Lady.
I'm Megyn O. People need to hear from me. Many people don't understand. Not much is covered in the White House.
It's expensive to live in the White House. We made it through.
We got out alive.
But what happened to me?
What happened to me? No one talks about it. No.
When Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson set their sights on Barack Obama, the result isn't just a roast, it's a political demolition with precision aim. Forget the usual talking points. This is raw, relentless, and razor sharp. They tear through the polished image, exposing the hollow theatrics behind the teleprompter king. If you thought charm could hide a legacy of failures, think again. This takedown isn't polite. It's hilarious, biting, and brutally honest. Obama never saw this storm.
It wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not on live TV. Not with two of the most recognizable faces in conservative media. But there it was, Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, sitting across from one another in a rare televised reunion, dropping one of the most shocking political bombshells in recent memory. What started as a sharp critique of elite corruption and political theater quickly veered into something no one expected: the unraveling of a carefully constructed narrative surrounding one of America's most celebrated political figures, Barack Obama. Megyn began the segment with her usual poise. "There are things," she said, "that we were told not to talk about during the 2008 campaign, during Obama's presidency, and even now. But that era of silence, it's over." Tucker, leaning back in his chair, nodded with that familiar half-smile. "We're not in the business of protecting illusions, especially when they shape how this country understands power." What followed was more than commentary. It was an autopsy, a methodical breakdown of what both of them described as a myth built on omission, redaction, and fear. They began with the early years. Barack Obama's elusive past, the years between high school and his rise to prominence. "Most people don't realize this," Megyn said, "but Obama's narrative was unusually protected, not just by his campaign, but by the press, the universities, and later, by the intelligence community." Tucker interjected, "It's not just about where he was, though there are strange gaps. It's about how airtight the silence has been. Even now, you can't question it without being attacked." They played clips of Obama in interviews, avoiding direct questions about his Pakistan trip in the early 80s. Archived footage where he vaguely referenced learning about the world and traveling through places Americans don't usually see. But as Megyn pointed out, this was during a time when Pakistan was an operational hotspot for the CIA, and he went there alone. Then came the bombshells. Megyn pulled out a document. "This was leaked to us last week," she said, "by someone claiming to be a former staffer on Obama's 2004 Senate campaign. It's a travel record, not just domestic flights, international ones. Several of them undocumented in any known biography, and not just to Pakistan. Also to Cairo, to Istanbul, and oddly, Geneva." Tucker's eyes lit up. "Geneva, that's the city where dozens of international intelligence liaisons operate."
Means everyone else just quietly agrees with him. His speeches sound like sermons, but the church closed down and the congregation moved on years ago.
She's on the record. They can pretend all they want that it's just tabloid fodder that has led people to think they're on the outs. That oh yes, he appeared without her, here or there, and people, no. Okay, first of all, she didn't go to the Trump inauguration. She didn't go to the Jimmy Carter funeral. He's been spotted out at basketball games and out to dinner with their daughters repeatedly without her. You'd be hard-pressed to find a recent picture of the two of them together.
Tucker can't help but laugh at the idea that Obama was ever labeled a transformative leader. Transformative in what way exactly? He transformed Middle East policy into a punchline. He transformed healthcare into a bureaucratic Rubik's Cube. And he transformed race relations into a Hollywood sequel with worse reviews than the original. The only thing that truly changed was the size of the government and the number of people pretending they understood what quantitative easing meant. Netflix original series where he interviews himself and still finds a way to interrupt. Tucker chuckles thinking about how Obama managed to weaponize being calm. Every time the country needed clarity, he showed up with abstract metaphors and sentences that circled themselves like a dog chasing its tail. When real leadership was needed, we got poetry. When action was required, we got metaphors. Tucker swears that Obama once addressed a financial crisis by comparing it to a jazz solo. No rhythm.
Don't go there unless you have a reason, Megyn added. This former staffer claims these trips weren't personal. They were preparation for what we weren't told. But it gets stranger, stranger indeed. They shifted the conversation to the so-called Frank in Obama's memoir, Frank Marshall Davis. A mentor, a poet, a journalist, but also a man on the FBI watch list during the Cold War. Tucker took it further. We've been told Frank was just a family friend, but the files we've seen suggest he may have had another role, one far more aligned with grooming Obama politically, even psychologically. Megyn dropped the next twist. According to CIA declassified documents, Frank Marshall Davis wasn't just being watched, he was also working with certain U.S. domestic counterintelligence units. As an asset. Silence in the studio. Tucker leaned in. So let's piece this together. Obama grows up under the influence of a man with intelligence ties, travels through CIA-dense regions in his youth, gets fast-tracked through elite institutions, then launches a political career out of nowhere, supported by donors whose names are still redacted on FEC reports. And no one questions this. The audience watching from home was stunned, but Megyn wasn't done. She pulled up a timeline on the screen behind her. It showed overlapping dates: Obama's enrollment at Columbia University and a confidential U.S. intelligence operation active in New York at the same time. This operation, she explained, was designed to monitor foreign students suspected of acting as intermediaries for hostile regimes. And guess what? One of the addresses listed in these documents matches an apartment Obama supposedly lived in. Tucker stared at the timeline. So he was either under surveillance or involved? Either way, this is not the story we were told. They then played an unearthed interview clip from a former Columbia professor. In it, he admits on camera, "To this day, I never met Barack Obama. I've asked other faculty, we don't recall him, not in classes, not on campus. It's bizarre." The next topic, his rise to national stardom. Megyn highlighted that in 2004, Obama was invited to give the keynote speech at the Democratic National Convention, an unheard of honor for a political newcomer. This was orchestrated, she said. Nobody gets a platform like that without serious backing. And we've since found that one of the main DNC advisors pushing for him had previously served on a CIA advisory council. Tucker raised his hands. At this point, what are we looking at? A gifted politician or an intelligence-backed product? Then came what Megyn called the darkest revelation of all.
Magician's trick. Make premiums skyrocket, deductibles balloon, and network shrink. But slap on a friendly name and say it with enough gravitas and boom, people start clapping. His global strategy could be summed up in 3 words: apologize, retreat, repeat. Megyn's favorite memory? The endless tours of late-night comedy shows. At some point, the President of the United States became a recurring character on more sitcoms than sitcom actors. Forget legislation, he had punchlines. Forget crisis management, he had charisma. The Oval Office started to look like a green room. It was less West Wing and more Saturday Night Live, but without the punch.
But I'd never read that Donald Young, this man Donald Young, called you and told you that he knew you'd had sex with Barack Obama.
That was the contact in late 2007 that I had that originally came under the guise that they were part of the Obama campaign.
So who?
Tucker grins, noting that every time Obama tried to sound relatable, it felt like your professor tried rapping in class to connect with students. He used slang like it was a second language he learned from a BuzzFeed quiz. There was always this unsettling sense that he was speaking from a place 5 feet above the rest of us, where regular people were just a theory, not an experience. Megyn can't help but poke fun at the mythology. Obama walking on water, curing diseases with a whisper, making the oceans recede with a wink. The guy had better PR than the Avengers. If the economy tanked, it was the last guy's fault. If the Middle East burned, it was a complex geopolitical inheritance. If the national mood soured, well, people just didn't understand his brilliance. He never owned failure. He narrated.
Pulled up an image, blurred faces, a secure location, what she described as a surveillance photograph from 2006, reportedly taken during an unlisted trip to Europe prior to his announcement to run for president. The photo shows Barack Obama speaking with a group of individuals later identified as non-governmental international advisors, most with links to private intelligence networks. This was never disclosed, never mentioned in any campaign finance filings. Tucker turned to the camera. This isn't theory anymore, this is evidence. And that's when the reaction began. The network broadcasting the interview received immediate pressure to pull this segment. A coordinated media blackout began. Legacy outlets refused to report on it. Social media platforms suppressed the clips, citing contextual integrity violations, but it was too late. The information was out. Alternative media exploded. Independent journalists backed up the timeline. Former aides from the Obama administration, anonymously, confirmed unusual travel patterns and non-traditional communication protocols used during his campaigns. And then Barack Obama responded, not publicly, but through his longtime communications advisor, who released a statement accusing Megyn and Tucker of fringe theorizing and dangerous revisionism. But notably, the statement avoided specifics. It didn't deny any travel, didn't address the intelligence ties, didn't even challenge the documents themselves. Megyn, in a follow-up show, pointed out, if these claims were false, they'd sue us. They'd bring in lawyers, they'd hit back hard. But all we're hearing is vague outrage. That's not a defense, that's a deflection, Tucker agreed. The silence says more than words ever could. Then came the public fallout. More whistleblowers came forward, one claiming to have seen encrypted communications between Obama and private intelligence firms as late as 2012. Another, a former journalist, confessed that stories about Obama's early years were killed by editors with CIA ties, but perhaps most damning was the leak of a confidential donor list from Obama's 2008 campaign. Several major funders had offshore entities linked to defense contractors and cyber intelligence startups. Some of these companies received federal contracts after Obama took office. And now, the public is asking questions no one dared ask 10 years ago. Who exactly was Barack Obama? Was he a gifted orator who inspired a nation? Yes. Was he a strategic politician without